Hello and welcome to Fridays with Fintelekt. My guest today is Diphat Tembo, Director of Compliance and Prevention Department at the Financial Intelligence Center in Zambia, which is the FIU of the country. Diphat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to host me today.
So before we start, let me just say a few words about Diphat. He is an economist by profession and holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Manchester. He is a member of the AML CFT National Task Force of Senior Officials, where he serves at the Secretariat. He is also a trained AML CFT assessor under the Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group, which is one of the FATF style regional bodies. And he has extensive practical experience in the design and delivery of AML CFT training to both the financial sector and the designated non-financial businesses and profession sector. So Diphat is very passionate about AML CFT supervision, financial intelligence investigations, operational, tactical, and strategic analysis, international cooperation, and special investigative techniques to disrupt illicit financial flows to ensure that perpetrators of financial crimes do not benefit from the proceeds of these crimes. So, Diphat, to start with, can you give our listeners a quick overview of the Financial Intelligence Center?
All right, but just briefly, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm actually humbled for that elaborate introduction. Yes, so the Financial Intelligence Center is the financial intelligence unit of our country, Zambia. It was established in 2010 by an act of parliament, the Financial Intelligence Center Act number 46 of 2010. It became operation in September, November of 2013. And that's when we began receiving suspicious transaction reports from accountable institutions, which we call here in Zambia as reporting entities. So the Financial Intelligence Center apparently is an administrative type of an FIU. And so it works as a buffer between reporting entities and law enforcement agencies. We have added responsibility, or one of the roles is that of undertaking supervisory function of those entities we call the designated non-financial businesses and professionals, where there is no designated supervisory authority. The Financial Intelligence Center is the one that plays that role. And also we also look at those that may have a designated compliance officer, but if they fail to undertake those supervisory roles, then the FIC comes in to take that role. But also just to mention that this is a government institution, but we are quite independent, and we are got at the police level. We have the board of directors who we report to as management, but we operate independently to ensure that the FIC is able to execute its mandate without interference.
Right. So, the mutual evaluation of Zambia, the report was adopted by the SIMLG Council in June 2019. So, a little bit more than a year back. Can you give us a quick summary of the level of compliance with the FATF recommendations and also the level of effectiveness of the country's AML safety system, and maybe some of the follow-up work that has taken place on strengthening the system based on the report recommendations?
Okay, so we underwent the mutual evaluation in 2018, and our MER was adopted and approved in 2019, published in 2019 June. And in terms of overall performance, compared to the 2007 report, we significantly, or rather there was a significant improvement in terms of our rating. And overall, in terms of technical compliance, we were rated compliant with 11 recommendations, largely compliant with 17 recommendations, partially compliant with 11 recommendations, and non-compliant with 1 recommendation. And this one, I can actually say that that was a recommendation 7. So overall, that was quite a good performance when you compare to some countries within the region in terms of technical compliance. And also when it comes to the immediate outcome or effectiveness assessment, overall we did extremely well, in as much as we never got something that is above moderate, but we only got 2 laws, and we had the rest being rated moderate. So for us, I think that was a good performance. That said, you note that in as much as those were good ratings, they may not be as good as we expected, because there are certain recommendations that come with certain expectations. For instance, recommendation 10, among others, if you do not get largely compliant or you are partially compliant, combined with other recommendations, the country can still be put under a certain monitoring. Now, following the adoption of the report in 2019, June, the country was put under what we call enhanced follow-up by the Financial Action Task Force, because of the same recommendation that I've talked about, recommendation 10, among others. Of course, also wire transfer, we didn't perform so well. And so we needed to put things in place. And current what we are doing, and thank you for that question, because in trying to comply with these or deficiencies identified under recommendations or technical compliance, the country, as I'm talking, has come up with robust amendments that are currently taking place. And as I'm talking to you right up now, about 5 laws have been introduced in Parliament, one of them being the Financial Intelligence Center Act, where we are addressing a number of issues concerning wire transfers, issues of recommendation 10 on customer due diligence, among others. So we basically want to clear up these issues that are easy. They are easy to deal with, issues to do with the law, because the Parliament is currently sitting. So we wanted to get rid of these before we have our next reporting, which is in the next few weeks. We'll be reporting to the ESAMLAG meetings in November 27th to 4th of December 2020. So overall, we are addressing those issues to do with the effectiveness are ongoing. And I think one critical issue that we are looking at ourselves is aspects of parallel investigation, issues to do with investigation, where we are seeing quite the number being low, in as much as we do quite a lot in terms of disseminations of intelligence reports to our colleagues, law enforcement agencies, but also we have seen that the numbers in terms of what is coming out of the reports that we sending may not be equivalent to what we are expecting. So we see quite a lot of work that has to be done under investigations, or we bring the culprit to book. But also we are continuing to receive technical assistance around these issues of investigation, prosecution. Currently, we have the EU on the ground as well, the US Treasury helping us to capacitate law enforcement agencies just to improve the capacity of following up on the proceeds of crime. So overall, we are not just trying to comply with the standards, but it's for our good. So as a country, we're not leaving any stone unturned, but we're making sure that we address all these gaps, at the same time complying with the standard, but also it's for the good of the country, because we need to look at whatever we do, we have got to be equivalent to the risks that we are facing in our jurisdiction. We have got most prevalent predicate offenses in our country being corruption, tax evasion, issues of drug trafficking. So we want to see that whatever we are doing, we are responding to the risks that we're facing. So that is basically what we are doing currently.
Excellent. Thanks, Diphat. So, Diphat, the FIC published its annual trends report sometime last year, and many other FIUs also do that. But what were the key highlights of the report? Are there any updates also that you'd like to share since the report was published?
Okay, so you will know that yes, this is one of our methods that we use to communicate to the public, but also to our various stakeholders in terms of the risks and the trends that we are seeing in the AML safety regime in Zambia. And so we publish these trends reports every year. and the 2019 report just came through towards the end, just last 2 months. And I think somehow it took long as we wanted to do a number of things. But generally, from what we are seeing, it's not different from other previous reports that we have produced. We continue to see one trend in terms of corruption cases still on the increase. While the cases may be low, but the amounts that are involved in these corrupt activities continue to increase. But also one thing that we are seeing is who are the main perpetrators of crimes. So quite a lot seeing that um, politically exposed persons, and of course that's quite a big thing for us as a country. We think quite a lot of numbers in that aspect, getting involved in these practices, and the sectors that are most abused. What we saw from our analysis is that procurement corruption is something that is quite big that we need to focus on, but also we're seeing some trends in the environmental crime issues to do with we've got this commonly known timber called mukula tree or the rosewood. We're seeing that being exploited, and what we are seeing is that the locals in those reserved places tend to they have kind of an arrangement that are getting in the cartel with the powerful individuals in the country, and they begin to exploit these species. And for us, I think that is another issue that we have also focused on, and that's why we want actually to undertake a risk assessment of the environmental crime. And the other thing that we have seen is the use of cash. Zambia is a cash economy, and I think for us we are seeing that trend increasing, and we are trying to make sure that those accountable institutions or reporting entities pay particular attention to these deposits that are being made, the withdrawals that are being made from the in their institutions, do a bit of some scrutiny in terms of the reasons and why maybe those activities are taking place. But also one thing that we observed in the previous trend, issues of tax evasion, it has continued to be on the increase. And in as much as the numbers cannot be compared to what we saw in 2018, but in 2019, we still see that that is still on the rise. And I think we continue to engage with our revenue authority to ensure that these culprits are brought to book, but also where recoveries are supposed to be done, that we do it. But one thing also that we saw in terms of the STRs, we saw a decrease in terms of the number of STRs, or can I say the intelligence report generated by the Financial Intelligence Center to the law enforcement agencies compared to 2018. And for us, I think we noted that in terms of funding and issues of resources for such institutions like ours is something that one cannot overemphasize, because we were not able to do a number of work, a lot of work in terms of analysis for us to conclude a number of cases that still sit with us. In an event that we had all these resources in place and the human resource, probably the number of STRs the number of intelligence reports that we disseminated, the law enforcement agencies probably could have been higher than what we did, because we still have a lot of work at our disposal, and we continue to work on them. And so basically, overall, that's what we are seeing. Nothing much in terms of terrorists, but we don't want to take things for granted. Terrorist financing is something that you cannot compromise. Even just one case can bring the country to its knees. So we continue to follow through these underground activities, MVTs, and we continue to observe the movements of funds to those jurisdictions that may be considered to be high risk. So basically, maybe we had one or two STRs that could have relate to those issues, but nothing much that can warrant us to worry. But we follow through these things to the latter.
Right. Different moving to the reporting entity side of things. What do you think are the practical difficulties that maybe banks and all the other reporting entities in Zambia face while complying with the regulatory reporting requirements and implementation of the right AML frameworks? And if you, I'm sure you know that any FIU generally plays a development role for some time, and then really moves into a regulatory role because they need to first shepherd the reporting entities to comply better, teach them how to do it, and why it is important to do it better, and then move on to regulation. So, what would you say are the difficulties that banks and reporting entities are facing there?
Yeah. So you find that in terms of compliance levels, when you look at the financial sector, compliance level is quite good compared to the designated non-financial businesses and professionals. And I think one major deficiency that we are seeing around the designated non-financial businesses and professionals are issues to do with the monitoring of transactions tools. Those systems that can help them to flag these out of norm type of transactions to the FIU. So you find that I would say 90% of the designated non-financial businesses and professionals don't have these systems that can help them to flag out these red flags to the FIO to detect transactions that out of norm. So that's a big area that we are working on to help them, that sometimes you do not necessarily need IT related systems, but sometimes what you use is intuition, your intelligence, human interventions, manual work actually can help you to pick out transactions that are out of norm and bring them to the attention of the FIU. So what we have done is to develop what we call sector-specific guidelines on suspicious transactions reporting for all designated non-financial businesses and professionals to help them look out at what are the red flags. For instance, if you're talking of accounting and audit firms, law firms, real estate agents, what are the red flags? And that has helped them to some extent. But it's something that it's work in progress. I would mention that to date, maybe we have only less than 4 or 5 STRs coming from this sector, which for me, I feel a lot has to be done in that sector. But the other thing that we are seeing in the reporting entities is just we are living in the era of technology, and a lot of crimes are emerging, cyber crime. We seem not to be moving at the pace, maybe criminals may be moving. And so we need to emphasize, or we need to continue engaging reporting entities to put systems in place that are going to move at the same pace with technological development. So issues of virtual currency, for instance, is something that I don't think we're doing fine as a country. In fact, I can mention here that we do not have even a regulatory framework for that space. As I'm talking to you, that's when we are trying to come up with mechanisms, or can I say framework, to regulate the risks associated with virtual assets. So any player around that area is not proper regulated. And so these guys or the VASIPs may abuse reporting entities, and they may come in the name of any other reporting entities. But at the end of the day, the activities that are involved in may not be understood by reporting entities, banks, whether insurance companies, capital market, way small when you are talking about DFNBP. So the area that we need reporting entities to focus on issues to do with systems, whether manual or IT related, to pick out these transactions that out of norm. And the ones those that sent to the FIU then can look through and able to decipher and take those that need to be taken to the law enforcement agencies for investigation.
Right. So moving on to the FATF side of things, and I ask this question to most of the people who I have a conversation with. At a global level, do you think that the FATF process for mutual evaluation and ranking of countries is democratic, especially since many countries would have fewer resources, whether it is funds, trained professionals, access to technology? should all countries be painted with the same evaluation brush, or should there be different methodologies for countries with different challenges so that they are not unfairly positioned on the global financial stage?
Yeah, that's a very a difficult question to answer, first of all. It is a very, very good question, very searching, and one has to be aware of how the global world has come to be like you are one. And so this connectivity in terms of the financial systems of the world, and so one has to be monitoring all these transactions, and and for me, one thing that I've come to understand is as long as we have these regional or international bodies that we belong to, it becomes very difficult to maneuver. I'll tell you one thing: we are members of the United Nations. And under the United Nations, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, Chapter 7 of the United Charter, all the resolutions, for instance, that are issued under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter becomes binding to the countries. And some of those the resolutions border on AML CFT matters. And so if you do not implement, or you do not abide by those resolutions that are issued, again, you are found wanting as a country. So I'm not seeing any democracy. Personally, this is not the country's position, but personally, I don't see any democracy. And so the issue is that you have the global institutions, the Financial Action Task Force, all these big global organizations that promulgates these MRCFT policies. These kind of cascades down to regional bodies. And at the end of the day, if you do not comply, you do not join Egmont, you have all these consequences that are coming. So it's not democratic. You may have difficulties with your resources, but as long as you are a country, you are required to comply with these. And so sometimes it becomes very, very difficult to comply with these requirements, like you have pointed out, issues of resources, issues of IT. We as in Africa, Zambia in particular, we're having difficulties even to regulate the space of virtual assets. Our colleagues are already implementing these. We are miles away, and then you are told comply. And so there are other things that really are not easy to comply with, but there are requirements. Unfortunately, you need to put something on the ground. So personally, this is my opinion. They are not there's no democracy. You just have to comply. So this is where we are, and we have no option. But I think there is need for Financial Action Task Force to begin to look at the overall picture, and begin to, which I know they are doing. Probably maybe we need just to have a proper direction. Certain countries, their GDPs are quite low, and in terms of their financial muscles to do a number of things to comply with all these international standards, it's a bit of a challenge. It takes time. And so in terms of sanctions that may be, apply to these countries, you begin to think of, do we really need to take these steps towards these countries? And I think those are things that maybe FATF should consider as they come up with all these standards.
Excellent. Well said, Diphat. My last question to you, and I know you've covered a bit of this earlier. So, what would you say finally are your expectations from banks, financial institutions, your other reporting entities in the country to ensure that the AML CFT compliance really improves in the country?
Yeah, so our expectation from the financial sector point of view, which are already doing fine, I think I'm expecting a load from what we call non-bank financial institutions to begin reporting. Banks are like almost taking 90% of the suspicious transactions reports come from the banking sector. So we have few coming from the non-bank, the bureau de change, for instance, the leasing companies, and other institutions. But I think we can do a lot, and we are expecting them to put preventative measures in place, issues to do with controls, the policies, AML CFT policies, even just the aspects of them going what we call independent review of their AML CFT. I think those are things that I'm expecting banks as well as non-bank financial institutions to put in place. For the designated non-financial businesses, I think we as FIU and other supervisory authority, we still have work to educate, to make these institutions aware of their obligations. It's not necessary, it's wastage of resources just to sanction an institution if you have not given them that platform of knowing what they are supposed to do. So we're doing a lot of sensitization before we can even think of sanctioning those that would be erring. So for us, we're expecting DFNBPs to respond, to cooperate. One in mind is the legal practitioner. It's a difficult thing anywhere in the world. When you are dealing with lawyers, when it comes to issues of reporting transaction or just complying with these AML CFT, it's a big thing, but we continue to engage them. And I hope there'll be a positive response. The rest of the institutions are together. We can indeed fight one common enemy, and that's the financial crime.
Right. Diphat, fantastic speaking with you today, and thank you so much for joining us. In this conversation. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me, and I'm looking forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you.